Hello, and welcome to A Lady Well Traveled. I'm your host and creator, Shannon Bednarova, and I'm delighted that you've joined us today. I would love to introduce you to our guest. His name is Barry Maughan, and Barry is a husband, father, journalist, and an author. He's traveled all over the world and had an extensive career covering Africa for the Voice of America for decades. He's a storyteller extraordinaire, and I know we're going to have an amazing conversation that you're going to love. So please join me in welcoming Barry Maughan to A Lady Well Traveled. Barry, please say hello to our listeners.
Well, hello, Shannon. Very nice to be with you and your many, many listeners. I've looked forward to our conversation for a long time. I'm glad that it's finally happening. So let's get rolling.
Well, I am too, and I'm just fascinated by you and all the things that you've done. And I'm getting ready to take a trip to Africa, God willing. I'm excited to pick your brain about all the wonderful things that you've experienced. I, of course, want to ask you about your career in journalism. Tell me, who is the most interesting person you've ever interviewed? That doesn't have to be most famous or notorious, but just somebody that you felt was fascinating.
Funny you should ask that because it's interwoven with our trip the length of Africa. Sometimes you can interview someone and it's such a serendipitous event that you don't make a lot of it at the time. But I'd have to pick Ibrahim El Tahawi. Now, that name probably does not ring a bell, but he was second in command to Abdul Gamal Nasser,
Oh,
who
yeah.
launched the coup in Egypt. When I
Mm-hmm.
first met Ibrahim, I met him as the president of the Young Men's Muslim Association. Well, being naive in a way, I occasioned that to be very similar to the president of the Young Men's Christian Association, an exalted position, but as it turned out, there was much more to the story. We met on a cruise liner around the Mediterranean littoral as we were getting set to land in Alexandria. We struck up a conversation, and lo and behold, we were both storytellers, and most of the stories were true, but we hit it off. And I always felt like, even when he told me that he was a general in the Middle East. Generals are a dime a dozen, not
Mm-hmm.
to be disparaging,
No.
but that
Mm-mm.
that that is the case. And it turned out that whenever I met him, he was surrounded by men in uniform. So I figured he had some gravitas to him.
Mm-hmm.
We met the first time, just the two of us, and had a long chat. And then he invited me the next day to meet his wife and me to show off my beautiful wife. And it just blossomed. When we landed the night before, he gave me his card and said, "If you're ever in Cairo, then look me up." We weren't planning to go to Cairo. We just decided that
Mm-hmm.
let's take the card in good grace and move on and probably never see him again. It didn't work out that way because of Muammar Gaddafi closing the borders to Libya and thwarting our attempts to drive across North Africa to Morocco to winter. And we decided we're in Alexandria. Either we turn tail and go back up to Europe for the winter, or let's go down to Cairo and I've got the guy's card.
Mm-hmm.
So we went down there having troubles with finding accommodations for our combi bus, Bridget and ourselves. And so I said, let me just show up at his offices. Well, his modest offices were really offices because he had like five or six office assistants. Back then, they were called secretaries. And I presented myself, and I thought I'll cool my heels here for a half an hour, and then he'll come out. And lo and behold, the doors swung open about a minute after the office assistant had gone in, and a big hug, and Ibrahim came out, and hi, how you doing? I thought going to his office, and it was like 10 times larger than anything I'd ever seen. You know, plush carpets and sofas and But what happened next was crazy. I'd like you to meet a few of my friends. Okay. This is Mahmoud Fauzi. He's the Minister of War.
My
Here's so
goodness.
and so, Minister of Health. Da, da. I met half of the Egyptian cabinet. Well, then it dawned on me. I think I'm missing something here. He, in
Hmm.
fact, turned out to be the second in command of the entire Egyptian government and the
Wow.
right hand man to Abdel Gamal Nasser.
Yeah.
And anyway, what flowed out of that was a beautiful relationship, friendship, I would dare to say, of
Uh-huh.
maybe 30 years until Ibrahim passed. But what he did for us then, truncated, he found a place for Bridget, our combi, to park, a place for us to stay, first class accommodations. He
Man.
brought his lieutenant Basri around each morning, and he had asked us, well, what would you ever like to see in Cairo and surrounds? And I made a list of, and I thought, well, what ensued
There's
was a
nothing to
magical
see in
carpet ride.
Cairo. Wow.
The museum,
Yeah,
the
the
Sphinx,
Sphinx,
the
pyramids.
pyramids,
Yeah. Right.
and the opera house where the original version of Aida was
Right.
performed. And so for the next 10 days, it was a magical
Mm.
carpet ride. Every day we were picked up in an air conditioned limousine
Mm.
and everything was paid for. He was at our Lieutenant Basri was at our beck and call,
Mm.
and then when we got time to leave and to go south because we made our decision not to go back to Europe at that time, first class tickets down to Aswan, and Bridget was put on a train and with a armed guard in the front so nothing happened to her, and she arrived down there, and the serendipity of it. It just
Amazing.
shows that you got to open your mouth and just talk to people. You don't know who they are. I didn't do it for any reason to gain favor. We just hit it off, and I subsequently interviewed him in my capacity as a journalist as well. I would say that he was probably the most fascinating person that I met. And when we talked, it wasn't politics or economics. He loved one football team in Egypt, Al Ahly, and I liked Zamalek, and they're fierce rivals, and we just kibitz about that and
Oh,
food and culture. Wonderful, wonderful experience.
yeah. That's fabulous. I love that story. Now, for our listeners who don't know exactly what Bridget is, please elucidate.
Bridget is the Celtic goddess of travel. And anyway, let me back up. We were both in New York and in jobs that we didn't like. And we said, let's go to Europe. We didn't have children. So, to the dismay of our parents, off we went in a tramp steamer across to Antwerp. But in the interim, we had bought Bridget. Bridget was a 1969 Volkswagen Combi bus, but it was outfitted as a home, well, a very small home where you could live in. The top went up and the whole thing. And she was our vehicle all throughout Europe and the length of Africa. And only once let us down, and that was a stupidity on my part. And when I had to sell Bridget in South Africa at the end of our journey, it was like losing a family member.
I'm
And
sure.
I still hope, well, 50 years later, I doubt it, but I just hope that somewhere she's somewhere in South Africa enjoying a great retirement.
That in itself is a wonderful story, too. You ought to write children's books about Bridget and how she takes around happy families to see wonderful places. That would be a
That's a
neat
good
thing.
idea.
Absolutely. I'd love that.
Hey, you can be my agent and get 80%.
There you go. Now, obviously, Ibrahim was an amazing character, but is there
Yes.
anyone else that you've met in your illustrious career that's left you starstruck, awestruck, speechless? Tell us about that experience because I know you've interviewed a lot of very famous and infamous people.
Well, I did a lot of politics
Hmm.
and economics, but I also did sports.
Hmm.
And I've interviewed people like Muhammad Ali.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And I'll tell you
Yeah.
that the circumstances were wild because this was in Muhammad's heyday.
Mm-hmm.
And we had met at his training camp in upstate New York, and I've still got the cap. He happened to know someone at the Voice of America, but he was being interviewed by the worldwide service of the Voice of America. But anyway, I got wind that Muhammad Ali was in the building. And if you're doing sports to Africa, he was a legend
Mm.
everywhere he went. If he showed up one time at the African boxing championships, and the building went crazy. They couldn't get enough. I said, I got to get him on my sports program. So you got to be bold.
Yeah.
No, he didn't have any time. It was taxi was pulling up at in front of the Voice of America in Washington, and he was off to the airport. And I said, I'm hopping,
In the
Mohammed.
car.
And I said,
Yeah.
oh yeah. And as we're tooling down the road, here I am interviewing him. Just a wonderful, humble person that I can't say that I knew very well. I only had those two encounters with him, but they'll live in my memory because of his graciousness and his wit. I mean, sharp as a tack. So that's another person that I'll remember with great fondness.
That's really cool. I like that story as well. Has there ever been a time you've done an interview and you've just kind of been gobsmacked, embarrassed, or just totally unprepared for what happened? Because being a journalist, you look into the people you're going to interview, unless it's something you're that's totally off the cuff. But let's say something happens that's just so out of character that maybe happened that was great, or something that just went off the rails. Did you ever have an experience like that?
Well, I've joked. Now I have to go to the other side because anyone reading my book will realize that I was one of a handful of foreign journalists embedded in Ethiopia, and we covered the entire creeping coup against the emperor.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to meet those who came out of the shadows who had helped mastermind the overthrow of the emperor very carefully, knowing that even in his 80s, he was still a very powerful Machiavellian figure who brooked no nonsense. And I had met and interviewed the person who turned out he was just the figurehead as president of Ethiopia for a very short time. And I met him one day and we had a very nice interview through an interpreter. And then less than a week later, I realized that he had been slain along with
Ooh.
25 other officers when um, the person who ended up being the real leader had one of his henchmen uh, open the door to where the cabinet was meeting and just spraying them all and killing them all, and including
Oh,
my and
yeah.
we had a very cordial
Relationship. Yeah.
relationship. It just shows you the tenuousness and danger of being involved in coverages. I want to tell you a story that will give you an example of that. I used to go out with a dear friend of mine, now deceased, Ian Murray, with first secretary of the British Embassy. He was my inside guy because he knew what was going on for
Mm-hmm.
many years. Well, we would go out at night to hedge baits. These were run down coffee bars. And we would meet with these shadowy figures who were purported to be higher in the echelon of the coup plotters. We did this for several months, and Ian was always very jovial and very helpful. One day I got a call and he said, come up to my office. And I started to kibitz and he said, hey, just come to my office. I thought to myself, this is not like Ian. So I hightailed it over to the British Embassy, went in his office, and he didn't say a word. He just had a manila envelope and he pushed it towards me. He says, open it up. And I opened it up and out rolled a 45 caliber bullet. It was a warning to Ian and myself that while we were talking to the purported coup plotter, then the Stasi, the East German police service that was the security for the emperor, had
Mm-hmm.
been watching us. This was their first warning to back off and stay away, or the next one would find its mark. So
Absolutely.
it will
No.
it will just show you that it's not all peaches and cream out there.
Mm-hmm.
And what did we do? We weren't heroes.
Hmm.
That was the last time we ever met like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's nothing to play with.
No, it's not.
Your life is on the line sometimes, and that's not to romanticize or put myself up on the pedestal. It's just part of doing work.
Yeah.
But you have to be wise and cognizant that there's a time to be brave, and then there's a time to fold your tent and get the heck out of
And
Dodge.
yeah. Well, no, my next question for you, Barry, was have you ever felt like there was a time on assignment that your life was in imminent danger and you felt like you might not get out alive? And I'm so that was one time, so you've probably got lots of times that
Well,
you felt
let me
that
tell you
way.
another time across the other side of the continent in Liberia, where a coup was, Charles Taylor was mounting a coup against the government. And I'd gone out with a bunch of journalists and made almost a fatal mistake. I wandered off trying to do my own thing and came face to face with a child soldier with a Bolitnikoff, AK-47. And, they are just trained killers,
Yeah,
and a twitch of his finger, and I wouldn't be talking to you now.
right.
He demanded my wife said, I asked him, do you want my shirt? Do you want my watch? Do you want my rings? He took them all, left me with just my underwear, but
Mhm.
didn't kill me. And
Wow.
I stumbled out of there with just my underwear on, and I will tell you now, to put this very nicely, it was soiled.
Well, I can imagine. Yeah.
But this just shows you that it's no game out there, and it
No.
isn't that way in many parts of the world now,
Right. I
where
think a
journalists
lot
put
of people,
themselves at war.
yeah, a lot of people think that journalists, oh, it's a great job. You just jet around to glamorous places and stay in beautiful hotels. And no,
Well, I mean, it's
there's
an
some of
element of that.
that.
The other that you have to know, and then the times when you weep.
Yeah. Yeah.
As one of my chapters in my book, when I covered the famine in Wollo province, where hundreds of thousands of people died, and we were in the throngs in our car, and people beating on us to try and get food, and then this woman, and it's my picture, and it went viral, but because it encapsulated the feeling. There she was in her gabi, which is just a loose dress, and she had this skeletal baby
Yeah.
on her arm. And with no shame, she just pulled her gabi aside and no milk, no milk. And she thrust the baby into my arms through the window. And
Mm,
instinctively, I grabbed the baby,
yeah, of course.
and my handler, in English to me, says, you can't keep that baby. We'll get in trouble with the authorities because I was there under false pretenses anyways.
Anyway.
No, doing bring any attention to myself, and I had to give that baby back. And so I tried to
Uh,
keep track of them, and I found out that 24 hours later, that baby had died.
had died, had passed. Oh my goodness.
So,
Yeah, those stories, yeah, and I understand why you're tearing up because those stories have to just stick with you. My next question was, what stories impact you the most? And that probably has to be one of them. I
well,
mean, my
it's just
goodness.
seeing the human misery,
Toll. I
and
know.
not just naturally, but
Yeah.
inflicted one upon another.
Another. Sure.
Another story, I was in the outback of Ethiopia out towards Somalia. And I was with an
Ugh.
interpreter on assignment, and the people live in little round huts. But this will give hope because of the oneness of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I sat down and I talked to this person through the interpreter, and I said, what are the things you really want in life? He said, I want 3 square meals on the table each day for my family.
Mm-hmm.
I want no foreign intrusion or as little as possible in my life. 3, I want a better life for my
Mm-hmm.
children. And 4, I don't want my boys being sent off to a foreign war to possibly die. Duh.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that what I want? We might be separated by ethnicity, religion, culture, or whatever. You scratch the surface, get beyond the surface of the skin. All our wants and needs are the same. When people ask me about Africa, I said, the people are wonderful. The governments can sometimes be a
Be
problem.
careful.
That's the thing I wanted to get out of my book was the
Mm-hmm.
beautiful people of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes, we'd be stuck in the quagmire with Bridget, and there's no way to get through. Out of the villages would come people and they'd be singing and they'd push us through there. And they were actually offended when I offered to pay them
Mm-hmm.
for it
Yeah.
in their
That's just
language.
what you
And
do.
I just knew it was, hey, we're doing this because we love
That's right, because we're just kind, wonderful people.
it. Yeah.
You're just prescient because all the questions I'm getting ready to ask you just answer. What do you believe is the biggest misconception about Africa and the people? That they want really the same things we do, and they are not what a lot of times they're portrayed as in the news or the movies or whatever. They want the same things we all.
Well, and also, Shannon, I think it's your attitude. You're in their home territory. If
Sure.
you go in with an arrogant, better
Mm-hmm.
than thou attitude, then you're not going to succeed. You have to meet them on their own level and as a fellow human being. In
Mm-hmm.
some cases, willing to help, other times needing help, but also just as one with them to meet them as fellow human beings. Both our children, now in their 50s, were born in Ethiopia
Mm-hmm.
under trying circumstances, but they grew up as minorities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They've seen the other side of it.
Sure.
So now my son, who travels around the world, he can arrive, say, in Delhi, where
Mm-hmm.
he visited as a child, and he's on the ground ready to work. The cacophony of smells and sounds, as you know, they drive by their horn,
That's right.
but he's ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
His team, it takes him 2 or 3 days to acclimatize himself. My daughter, who deals in adoptions, she
Mm-hmm.
deals with many ethnicities and religions, but she can work with them easier because she's, I wouldn't say a woman of the world, my son, a man of the world, but they have traveled the world. And I don't want to misquote it, but essence, it says, the more you travel, the more wise you are because you get to see that we're all the same under the skin.
Absolutely.
Our dreams and schemes are basically the same.
The more you travel, the more you realize that everybody's
You know that. I'm preaching to the choir here,
sure.
Shannon.
Will you put on your journalist hat for us? Africa currently has a very complex geopolitical situation. A lot of international players involved, meddling in their affairs. There's
Right.
are a lot of Islamic extremists vying for power. There's a lot of vying for control of mineral rights and control of resources. And the United States is in the middle there too. So
Amen.
China, Russia,
Right.
everybody. So, can you give our audience a 50,000-foot overview of what you see is happening right now? As a Christian, I hate the slaughter of Christians, and I'm concerned. Tell us about the aspect of safety. Is it safe to travel? Is it pretty tenuous depending on where you go?
Well, as I used to say to my daughter when we lived outside of District of Columbia, and she would go out with her friends. And I said, "Look, you've got enough to do here in the suburbs of Maryland. If you put yourself in a compromising position enough times, the chances are you're going to be compromised." The same applies to Africa. You get a sixth sense of where you should travel or where you shouldn't travel. Yes, you go by the State Department recommendations, but you've got to use common sense. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong. They
Mm-hmm.
don't use their common sense in those situations. Now, the geopolitical. The reason that the Chinese and Russians were able to make initial inroads, this is very important. They met the country and its economy where it was at that time. Graphic example, the United States was vying control of Ethiopia with the Russians at the time. The Ethiopians were having to import oil at a certain cost. Well, we had an old oil refinery in Bulgaria, and we decided to ship it down to Assab, which is port was then in Ethiopia, is now in Eritrea. It was outdated, outmoded, and it was found that refining oil through here was more expensive than them to buy it on the open market. We were not going to the government and saying, what do you need to help right now, the stage of your economy? Conversely, next door, when there was a real government in Somalia, the Chinese came in and said, what do you need at this stage? We need a match factory, upgrade our fishing industry. Not glamorous, not glitzy,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what they needed to help their economy. That's where the Chinese have come in and done a good job.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for their own reasons, fair
Sure.
enough.
Yeah.
But they are looking and they give the government the feeling that we're going to help you right now to grow your economy. It's not what we necessarily, it's what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And they stepped in and they helped build and maintain the Tanzam Railway when
Mm-hmm.
it was going to pot. Things like that just epitomize that the United States and other countries in the West just have to have a better idea of individual countries and what their economy needs at the time, rather than just trying to foist some high profile, glitzy deal on them. Africa has to understand Africa. It's a continent. There's
Yeah.
53 individual
Yes.
countries.
Country.
Let's take Nigeria for a while. Okay, everybody buddies up to Nigeria. Why? Because they have one thing that everybody wants. It's called Bonny crude oil. It's an oil that doesn't need to be refined as much. Okay, but they have to be savvy enough to realize once that runs out, where's that country now? Niger with the rare earth minerals. Take advantage of that. You've got something that people need right now. Don't be taken in by hail fellow well met and their finite resources, not infinite.
Mm-hmm.
Once they're gone,
They're gone.
then the so-called friendship's gone,
Mm-hmm.
as there were in my day. There were the Idi Amins, the Mobutu Sese Sekos in
Mm-hmm.
Democratic Republic.
You're bringing
Zaire.
up some names, my goodness, that I remember growing up with and hearing and going, "Woo! What
Well, yeah,
tough
yeah.
people!"
That was another experience of covering the rumble in the jungle.
Yeah.
Going back to
There
Muhammad
you
Ali
go.
sitting ringside and trying to report and call it, and seeing Foreman or Ali just hanging on the ropes, and I'm saying, well, he's done for. Foreman's going to beat the heck out of him. But that was the deal. Foreman's going to wear himself out. It was steaming hot, and the perspiration just running
Everybody.
off you.
Yeah.
Just understand that there were bad actors back in my days, and there's bad actors today.
Hey.
Okay, when you travel, you don't have to try and emulate what we did. Fools venture in where angels fear to tread. After a while, it was one day after another. I'm not making light of it
Sure.
because it was an epic journey.
Of course.
There's no shame in. Like my son and family went over to Kruger National Park,
Mm-hmm.
and they saw the lions, zebras, and giraffes, and had a wonderful time. You don't have to go the length of Africa or fly into Nairobi
Right.
and go to the game park that's right there in the environs of Nairobi and have a wonderful time. But get over there and
See
see
it.
the people, see the cultures. And if it's in a controlled environment,
You'll be
so be
fine.
it.
Yeah.
So be
Right.
it.
Right.
Take your meds, take your shots. The point I'm trying to make is it's a wonderful continent with such variety, from Kilimanjaro to the Zambezi Falls, the Queen Victoria Falls still, the pyramids,
Yeah. I mean,
Mount Cameroon, Ali Bella, with hewn out of rock in the outback of Ethiopia. But you do your research.
Yes.
Know the amount of time you want to spend, what's important to you. And if animals are important, Ngorongoro Crater, you got to go at the right time of the season when they're all migrating
Mm-hmm.
from the Serengeti. Like any journey to any part of the world, you got to plan, but don't be afraid because it's a continent it's just waiting to welcome you.
And be explored. Yeah.
The continent is just as beautiful or even more so today. And the people likewise.
Wonderful. If you could narrow it down, what's the most magical place that you've ever been in
Well, it was a
Africa?
magical event.
Okay.
Time, a few seconds that will live with me forever. We, as I said, had landed in Alexandria and met Ibrahim. We were driving the desert road because it was during one of the many wars Egypt was having with Israel, War of Affinity. And we're just driving along. We didn't know where we were. We just knew that Cairo was somewhere off in the distance, and we're just driving all by ourselves. And we come up over a rise, and they're strung out like a string of pearls on a necklace with the pyramids. And
Nice.
I swear, I get chills. I got
Of
chills right
course.
now
Of course.
and it wasn't even close, but there they were.
There they were.
And that's something that
You'll never forget.
everybody has to see once. I mean, it's great. You see it on television and all that, but, and then to get up close and see one stone, one of millions of stones is higher than you are.
Of course.
And,
Huge.
and huge. And then you got me started now. Kilimanjaro. With that iconic mountain standing all by itself, the freestanding mountain with the snow cone on
Yeah.
top. And then you're sitting in Amboseli National Park and you've got a adult brew in your hand and then you're looking up at the mountain and the sun's going down, glinting off the top. And then on the one hand side, along the skyline, there's a herd of elephants
Mm.
eating up the skyline. Iconic. And the final one, of course, I could go on and
Oh,
on,
of course you
is
can.
as the Victoria Falls,
Yeah.
which you must go to. See, this is planning. Low water, low water. You go in high water, you see nothing. Why? Because of the billions of gallons that are falling over there and throwing up this fine
Fine
mist.
mist. Yeah.
But that's where the winds take the mists and you're given, capes and hats and otherwise you'll get soaked. And then you can see the billions of gallons of water just flowing over this crack in the earth. Amazing.
Amazing.
Amazing. You have to see that to really believe it.
Here. I cannot wait.
Well, think of me. Hey, can I come along in your hip
Come
pocket?
on.
I'll
Come
come along.
on. I'm doing
No,
Robos Rail, so I'm very excited about that. So,
yes,
yeah,
yes.
3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woo.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What foods or cuisines in Africa are must tries for someone if they are foodie? Obviously, Ethiopian food is kind of trendy and South African
Yes.
wine,
Yes.
but I'm sure there are many, many others that are amazing, but a lot of people haven't tried them. So, if you were like, hey, I want to give you the inside scoop on African food, what would you say people should try?
Well, I mean, you stole my thunder.
No.
I love Ethiopian food,
Okay.
and Ethiopian food has taken off here
Yeah.
for one reason. It's all on in something called injera, and
Mhm.
it's in a basket, and you have the dura what, you have the lychee what, you have all the various little dishes that
Mhm.
are put, and then you use the injera as a kind of pancake, if you
Mhm.
will, and
In
you chicken and with boiled egg in there in a very spicy sauce
Mhm.
called berbera. Well, that'll knock your socks off, clean your sinuses out.
Yeah.
But they have a true cuisine. I'm only glossing over part of it. The
Mhm.
part I like the best, two things: the Buna ceremony. Buna being Amharic for coffee,
Mm.
because Kaffa province, Kaffa coffee,
Mm.
that's where coffee came from,
Yeah.
where it is brewed in special earthen pots, and it's almost like
Mm.
being in England with
Yeah,
the
with
4
tea.
o'clock tea. The other one I love is when you're sitting around the injera basket. It's a real tradition.
Mm.
Gosha is, and you've washed your hands and everything's,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll mix up a mix, maybe a little Dora Wat, a little Liche, a little, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
to the person to your right or someone you love, you offer and you
Ah.
feed them.
Ah.
That's
Yeah.
called Gosha. I fly. Oh man, you get to South Africa, gotta have their version of the barbecue, and
Okay.
it's gotta be washed down with a nice wine from Stellenbosch of the Worcester
Stellenbosch,
area.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's heaven.
Mm-hmm.
If you went to Mozambique and one of the ports, you can have a langosta.
Langostina, lobster, right?
Lobster. Oh, mama, I remember sitting on the dock of the bay with a friend, and the perspiration is running, and we're having a local beer, and we're just there a dime a dozen,
Oh
and
yeah.
just eating langosta.
Mm.
See,
Wow.
I told you some of the drawbacks of international journalism, but there are
Some of the
some
good times,
benefits
yes.
too,
Of course.
but you can find beautiful products that seem to grow extra well in Africa. The little ladyfinger bananas,
Mm.
they are ambrosia.
Mm.
Things just seem to grow like papaya or
Yeah.
pawpaw, just to have the different taste. The pineapple, everything seems to be. They just seem to have a culinary vibrancy about.
I can imagine. I'm going to look forward to it, trying whatever's there. Now, I love all this beautiful music and the movie Out of Africa. People that have been in Africa are like, oh, that's Hollywood, that's stylized, all that's fine. But I love the beautiful tonality of all of the African actors and their speaking. And is all that hype, or is there a beautiful culture of singing
Now,
and music
Shannon,
there?
to this day, I cannot hear Ethiopian music without a tear come to my eye. The
Mm.
Mashenko, kind of a violin, a handheld violin, and the Ethiopian orchestra. The Ethiopian music, I beg everybody listening to get a hold of Ethiopian music. It's so emotive. It's so beautiful.
Mm.
It runs the panoply of emotions. It's wonderful music. And then you go across to Mali. Man, Mali music is just every area. The music from Zaire is beautiful. There's so much music from the continent that sets my late colleague Leo Sarkeesian, called the Music Man in Africa, had a weekly program on English to Africa, and he would highlight this. And I don't care if you've never been there like myself, but it will take you there through
Mm.
the wings of sound and emotions.
I
I can't say enough
love
about it.
watching your face as you talk about this because it's obviously struck a chord.
I listen to it 2 or 3 times a week, especially the Ethiopian music, and it's just I'm transported back there to the cultures of Africa, and we can learn so much from them. Not to get serious again, but
That's all right. Get
they
serious.
they a strong familial bond. Like, let me give you an example. The Ik people that live in northwestern Kenya, they live near the desert. They, as people get older, past when they're in their prime, they are given chores around the village, and then they watch the grandchildren, great grandchildren. But then when the time comes, they're allowed to walk out on the desert and die on their own terms, and then their body is brought back and venerated, and they are never shunned, cast aside. There's always a dignity to which they are allowed to live out their lives, and we can learn a lot from that and other aspects of the culture, just caring for one another in ways that maybe we can learn from the humanity of it all. But just because maybe your utilitarian value has lessened, that you're not worth anything, and this is why in a vein of that, that the oral tradition is so important in Africa, where for generations, stories have been passed down, songs have been passed down from old people and youngsters sitting at their knee and learning the songs and the traditions of their ethnic group. Because this binds people together. You have to have a sense of belonging somewhere. And through this oral tradition, this held in such high esteem that it's indelibly inscribed on the psyche of that group, of that village. They know who they are.
Yeah.
And they know that they always have a home. And this is why one of the darkest periods of the continent, and you know where I'm going, slavery. It was so important for them to know where they're from, that each ethnic group had a certain enfanglement, a way. As a child, it was carved into their face. So if they ever got separated, raid here and there and separated, they could maybe raid back. And as soon as they see these entanglements, which never go away, you're one of us. And no matter how long they've been away or the circumstances, they are embraced because blood's thick in water.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways in the United States, from Western cultures, we've lost our storytelling. We've lost our familial bonds in so many ways. Everybody's too busy being on screens. They don't visit their loved ones and their elders anymore.
That's why it was so important for people like Alan Lomax and Uncle to make them to get into the Appalachian regions and to collect the stories and the songs, because once they're gone, they're gone. This was a way of preserving that tradition.
Yeah. This has been wonderful. We've been together over an hour.
Time flies when you're having fun.
Oh my gosh, we've had a great time. Before we close, can you tell our listeners how to find you on the internet, how they can learn more about you, your career, and your books, and how they can contact you if they want to?
Well, you can just Google my name and it will come up. I also have my own website, www.barrymaughn. Of course, my book's available on Amazon and Goodreads, called Beneath the African Sun. And I say very humbly, you'll find it a good read. Because if you like the way I talk, well, that's basically the way I write. I don't pull punches. I don't try to pretend that I'm more than I am, but I think you get the true essence of a beautiful continent. If I've achieved one thing with the book and with other parts of my career is don't be afraid of the continent. Be wise, but go and see it for yourself. And don't listen to all the stuff, because we know as journalists, if it bleeds, it leads. There's a lot of wonderful, innovative things going on in Africa. And people who go there and come back and we chat and they say, I didn't know that. Yeah, because you didn't go, you didn't see, but now you see. So it's really been my pleasure and honor to talk to you, Shannon.
It's been delightful. Thank you so, so much. And I hope you'll come back again and speak with us.
Well, whenever you'd like me.
I'd love that.
Look, hey, listen, you could even send a carrier pigeon because we're in contiguous states.
Well, you know what? I'd like, after I come back from my trip to Africa in May, maybe we can get back together and compare notes.
Definitely.
That would be fun. I'd like that very much.
Love that. I just wish you and your podcast the very best because you are helping to spread the good news about Africa.
Thank you to all of you who have tuned in today to listen to this wonderful podcast with Barry Maughan. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. I've loved every minute. Get in contact with me. My email address is Shannon@aladywelltraveled. That's Shannon@aladywelltraveled.com. And traveled is spelled with 2 L's. Please let me know how you like the podcast. If you've got any suggestions for topics, I'd love to hear from you. You can also share this podcast with friends and family. We're on all streaming platforms. I want you to know that God loves you and created this big, beautiful world just for you. All you have to do is get out there and see it. So until we meet again, bye-bye.